God's messenger said, you're not going to see anymore. You will not be able to do what you're attempting to do. But not because I changed your desire, I changed your ability to see. And the assumption is they've also lost their ability to see the truth. Probably had lost that of their own volition long before this. But regardless, they're attacking Lot. The angels now save Lot. They pull him inside his house, they bolt the door, they blind them in that are close by. And the tension eases for the moment. The family's no longer going to die. I gotta imagine Lot and his daughters aren't in a great spot as far as family relationship goes. But it was a pretty tense moment, and now that has kind of passed. Meanwhile, the angels question Lot. Do you have any other relatives here in the city? They asked. Get them out of this place, your sons-in-law, sons, daughters, or anyone else, for we are about to destroy this city completely. The outcry against this place is so great that it has reached the Lord, and he has sent us to destroy it. And again, this illustrates what we talked about with Abraham. God knew what was going on. He sent the angels to destroy the place. But he wanted Abraham to know, I'm not doing this flippantly. I will experience what they're doing personally. And so the angels had always been coming to destroy the land. But God verified to Abraham, I'm going to check and see if what I know to be true is true. And I'm going to check personally. But so he sent us to destroy it. Lot rushed out to tell his daughter's fiancés, quick, get out of the city. The Lord is about to destroy it. But the young men thought he was only joking. So what do we learn about Lot's ability to witness in this city? I mean, keep in mind, a whole group of people just got blinded. So that's kind of like a little bit of a wake-up call. He could look at his daughter's fiance and say, hey, if you don't believe me that something's going down, walk out there and ask any of the guys that are blind while they're around. These guys came from God. They were attacked by the city. God's going to destroy it. I've been telling you guys about this God. Except he probably hasn't. And when he tries to, he's laughed at by his son-in-law. Because the idea of Lot, the righteous man, having a relationship with God is laughable. And they don't take him seriously. So Lot then returns to his own home. They wait out the night. It's dawn the next morning. Verse 15. The angels became insistent. Again, this seems weird. Why are the angels having to insist at all? Hurry, they say to Lot. Take your wife, your two daughters who are here, and get out right now, or you will be swept away in the destruction of the city. When Lot still hesitated. And what is going on in this story? I'm not going to stand up here and claim to be a righteous man, even though we have from God's word that Lot was a righteous man. I live in a relatively small town, Oxford, Georgia. I have a home there. If a whole group of people from Oxford showed up at my house and said that they were going to rape me, I would move. And you know what you wouldn't have to do? You wouldn't have to insist. I would do it by myself. I'd do it real quick. You know, he has a town. He has a house in this town. His house is attacked by people that were going to kill him and his family. And the angels are saying, we're now going to kill all of them. And you got to get out of here. And he waits all night. And at dawn, they become insistent. And he still hesitates. Grab what you can. Get out now. Everything here is going to be destroyed. So he's been threatened by the city with a fate worse than Gabriel. By the men that his brothers. He's been told by the angels that were attacked that God is going to destroy everything. And if he doesn't leave now, he will be destroyed as well. And he will not let go of his home in the city. What could possibly be going through his mind? And if you think of this like big picture, kind of the way this is typically presented as a cultural problem and really directed at whatever, Lot's response doesn't make any sense at all. Especially if you say, well, Lot's a righteous guy. We know he is because Peter said he was. And Lot was vexed by the evil in the city. We know he was because Peter said he was. And there's no indication in the story that Lot took part of at least the worst part of what was happening in the city. It doesn't seem like Lot was running around trying to rape people. So what is going on when this comes to a head? And one of the commentaries I was reading as I went through this made the claim that he believed this is the moment when Lot had to choose between the city and the comfort and the hedonism and the lifestyle and God. And Lot was unwilling to make the choice. And he was unwilling to make the choice after seeing the depravity of the city. And after seeing what the city represented and how they felt about him. And I think that commentary was correct. I believe that Lot was faced with a point. You now must choose who do you serve. Are you the righteous man that serves God, or do you have a house in Sodom? Make up your mind and get out now. And he's unwilling to make that choice. And part of me would say, I could never be dumb enough to be in that situation and have trouble with this choice. But the sin in our lives treats us the exact same way. And we're called to respond the exact same way with the exact same stakes. Right? My own will, whatever that looks like in my life, that would look at God and say, no, I'm going to do this because I want it right now, will destroy me. Absolutely will destroy me. And God says in his word and through our community and through my relationship with him, get out. Stop this. Get away from this. And I hesitate. And I make God be insistent. And then I still refuse to choose. As God says, this is going to destroy you. And I say, but yeah, I've got a life here that's comfortable. And so Lot's attitude doesn't make sense until I bring it down to the individual. And I say, what is my attitude when God deals with sin in my life? And more often than not, it looks just like this. God has to beat me over the head with the truth of what's going on. And when I see it as clearly as Lot sees it, there's still a part of me that says, yeah, but kind of got my thing here. And I don't want to lose it. What is Lot losing? I mean, how could you have this experience and in the morning go, well, let's talk this over a cup of coffee before we just commit to anything rash? What is good? But that's how we respond. And it gets even better. So when Lot still hesitated, this is verse 16, the angel seized his hands and the hands of his wife and his two daughters and rushed them to safety outside of the city. For the Lord was merciful. So God takes mercy on Lot. Amen. Grabs him and grabs his family and pulls them out of this city that is about to be destroyed. When they were safely out of the city, the angels ordered, run for your lives and don't look back or stop anywhere in the valley. Escape to the mountains or you will be swept away. That's pretty clear cut. And it sets the stakes high. It says, Lot, we in God's mercy have pulled you out of this nest of sin that you made a house in. Now run and don't look back and don't delay and get to the mountains. God is sending you to the mountains. And Lot responds, oh no, my Lord. Lot begged, you have been so gracious to me and saved my life. Lot recognizes what's happening. And you have shown such great kindness, but I cannot go to the mountains. Disaster would catch up to me there. What exactly is he running from? Disaster would catch up to me there, and I would soon die. See, there's a small village nearby. Please let me go there instead. Don't you see how small it is? Then my life will be saved. Now, what kind of person is Lot? Lot's a nomad. He's a tent dweller. That's how his wealth was generated living with Abraham. That's how he acted when he moved to Sodom. And they say, get out of this valley that we moved to. Go to the mountains. Probably the mountains you stood on with Abraham when you chose the valley. Go there. That's where God is sending you. And he says, thank you so much for saving my life. But I don't want to go where God is sending me. I could die there. I want Sodom, but not quite enough Sodom to make God mad. Give me the little city over there. God didn't say he was going to destroy that one. I could still have what I have here, but it won't be so loud that God destroys it. That's crazy. But that is sin in our lives. And when God finally grabs us and pulls us out of it, our response more often than not, and Lot's response is, okay, what can I get away with then? If you're not going to let this fly, and you're sending me to the mountains, I'm not going to the mountains. I could die up there. I won't be in control up there. So how about I get what I just had, but small enough that it won't bother you enough to respond to? And that's what he asks the angel for. After thanking him for saving my life, let me go to this little city. All right, the angel said, I will grant your request. I will not destroy the little village, but hurry, escape to it, for I can do nothing until you arrive there. So God has instructed the angels to destroy the town, but to spare Lot. Seems very likely that he did that specifically for Abraham's sake. All right, the angel said, I'll grant your request. I'll not destroy the little village, but hurry, escape to it, for I can do nothing till you arrive there. This explains why that little village was known as the Zoar, which means little place. Lot reached the village just as the sun was rising over the horizon. Then the Lord rained down fire and burning sulfur from the sky on Sodom and Gomorrah. He utterly destroyed it, along with the other cities and villages of the plain, wiping out all of the people and every bit of vegetation. But Lot's wife looked back as she was following behind him, and she turned into a pillar of salt. And here we have the first clear indication of what this lifestyle has cost Lot. Well, maybe not the first, because we know he's lost his character to an extent, right? At a minimum, he is now a coward. And there was nothing to make it seem like he was a coward before. And he was willing to live in Sodom, and he was willing to choose Sodom over God. And then when God made him leave Sodom, he begged God to have less Sodom and still not God. And so we know that that is Lot now, the righteous man. This is what the vexed soul looks like. A person clinging to the thing that is actively trying to kill him itself and will kill him as God destroys it. So he's getting death from the thing he loves and from the God he supposedly serves because of the thing he loves, and still chooses the thing over God. And when God takes away that choice, he chooses a slightly smaller version of the thing over God. So that's Lot. And they're running to this little town instead of the mountains. And Lot's wife looks back. And it's worth noting here that this verb, look back, it's not like a glancing verb. It connotates like a prolonged stare. So it's used in multiple places through the Old Testament. This specific Hebrew verb was used earlier, and let me see if I can find this in my notes. I want to give you guys the passage. Genesis 15. So Genesis 15:5, God tells Abraham, stare at the stars, look at the stars and count them. And I'm going to make your descendants like the stars. And that verb there, look at the stars, that's the same verb that was used. Stare at them and count them. Gaze intensely for a prolonged period of time and do work. This is also used later in Exodus. It's used a bunch of times, but I'm using these two examples to kind of catch the drift of what's happening in this looking. It's also used in Exodus when Moses gets up and walks into the tabernacle to be in the presence of God and to talk with God directly on behalf of the nation of Israel while they're in the desert. It says all of the nation would come out of their tents and they would watch Moses. They would look at him as he walked through the nation into the tabernacle in the presence of God. That was the verb that's used there. They looked at him. It didn't like glance, oh, there's Moses. Like this is Moses walking into the presence of God. And the whole nation would get up and watch him. That's the verb that was used when the wife looked back. So there wasn't like a loud noise that startled her. And she looked over her shoulder and was turned to a pillar of salt. She was getting pulled away from the home that Lot created. And she was gazing longingly at that home as her God destroyed it. And God said, nope. And turned her to a pillar of salt. And whose fault is that? It's Lot's fault. Now it's her fault. She looked back. She's responsible. She's a full-grown human being. But Lot built that house in the city. Lot moved his family into it. And Lot let his family fall in love with it. So much so that as God was destroying it, after that city attempted to kill her entire family, the thing going through her mind was the loss of the home. And she's taken. She's gone. Verse 27, Abraham got up early that morning, hurried out to the place where he had stood in the Lord's presence. He looked across the plain toward Sodom and Gomorrah and watched as the columns of smoke rose from the cities like smoke from a furnace. But God had listened to Abraham's request and kept Lot safe, removing him from the disaster that engulfed the cities on the plain. So what does Abraham see and what does Lot see? Abraham got God to say, I will not destroy the cities if there are just 10 people that are righteous. And he wakes up and he runs to the place where he stood with God and he sees the destruction. And Abraham realizes that Lot couldn't get 10 people. But it says God spared Lot. Lot sees his wife killed because she loved what God was destroying and what was destroying her family more than she loved God. And she wasn't spared from the judgment. If we continue through the story, we find out that Lot is so struck by what happens that finally he makes a decision that looks like someone actually righteous. And he runs to the mountains where God sent him. And he lives in the mountains alone with his 2 daughters. And the story gets even worse from there. Because what's going on at this point? His daughters basically seduce their father and do so because their worldview has been so corrupted and so twisted that that was the normal response to being isolated in the place that God sent them. And whose fault was that? Lot built the house they grew up in. Lot was their representation. I mean, they're responsible for their actions, sure. But Lot built a home in the middle of the city of sin, fell in love with that sin in that city, and it destroyed his character, it destroyed his wealth, and it destroyed his family. And as God was telling him this was going to happen, Lot hesitated. And Lot hemmed and hawed. And Lot said, I just can't choose. And God pulled Lot out of the city, grabbed his hands and pulled him away. And Lot said, okay, I'll take a slightly smaller version if you'll just leave me alone there. And that's what the sin in our life looks like. Now, the positive aspect to this story is because this is a dark story. And with the exception of Abraham, there's not really a single character on the human side of this story that has any redeeming qualities that you can pick up. And even Abraham is asking God, who are you? And is this what we're really doing? And what's going on here? And then he rushes to the place he talked to God and sees the destruction and realizes there were not even 10 righteous, including my family. But in our own lives, we can get so committed to the sin. And this isn't like the old school Southern Baptist, you're not allowed to have fun, sin is fun, you can't do it. This is the sin that is destroying you. This is an actual picture of our will lived out to its fullest. A cancer that eats us from the inside out. And God says, I will cure you from that. And we say, yeah, but I'm on the fence. I kind of like it. And the story of Sodom and Gomorrah and Lot is not a story that's looking at any specific people group and saying, oh, well, those guys are bad. It's a good thing you're not like them. It's the story of a righteous man surrounded by sin that fell in love with the sin. And when God made him choose, he showed him what the sin was, then made him choose, he was unwilling to make the choice. And it destroyed everything about him. And Peter still describes him as righteous at the end of the story. So the takeaway for us, one, if we're in God's family, we are righteous. Right? Lot was righteous in Sodom. And he was righteous in the little town he ran to because he wouldn't go to the mountains. And he was righteous at the end of the whole thing when every aspect of his life had been destroyed by his sin because he was God's. So we have that going for us. Two, at any point in this story, all Lot had to do was go where God asked him to go. That's it. And lead his family there. And three, we need to be very careful about the world we live in and whether we live in a tent outside the city, walking to the city gate to represent God, or whether we build a home inside the city and forget who we're serving. Because by all indication, Lot did love God, but not as much as he loved Sodom. And that changed because he was not that guy when he split up with Abraham. And that's a daily battle that we face. And the odds that we're playing for are as extreme as the odds that Lot played for. Our lives are at stake, our character, our wealth, much more importantly, our families will be destroyed by the decisions we make. And the decision is as clear as it could be. Do you want this thing that wants to kill you? Or do you want the God that died to save you from it? And we struggle with that decision because it's our will that we have to sacrifice. I have a song keyed up that I'm going to play as a closer. But my challenge for our church coming into this new year is to really look at where we live in this world and what matters to us. There is nothing wrong with Lot living in the tent outside of the city, attempting to be a voice for righteousness. And by all indications, if Lot had done that, the city would not have been destroyed. But he didn't. And he was destroyed, and his family was destroyed because he loved the sin more than he loved God. And God wasn't taking something from him. God was trying to save him from himself.